The city learned your name when you stopped existing. Thea Winters had been invisible for 10 months. 10 months since the night her mother's breathing stopped. 10 months since a man with a snake tattooed around his neck had smiled while pressing a needle into Claire Winters' arm. 10 months since 12-year-old Thea had watched through the crack in a closet door as the only person who'd ever loved her convulsed on a stained carpet and died. Run, little girl. Run before I change my mind about loose ends. So she ran. Oakland's streets swallowed her whole that October night. The city didn't care that she was small, that she was alone, that she was terrified. It never asked her age or her story. It simply opened its mouth of dark alleys and abandoned buildings and let her disappear into its belly. Now it was August. The kind of August that baked concrete until it shimmered, that turned metal too hot to touch, that made every breath feel like inhaling fire. Thea sat on the corner of 5th Street with a piece of cardboard in her lap. The sign said hungry, please help. The marker had run out of ink after please, so she'd scratched the rest with a ballpoint and pen she'd found in a gutter. Nobody read it anyway. People had a way of looking through her, past her, around her. Their eyes would slide right over the small figure in oversized clothes, the dirt-smudged face, the hair chopped short with dull scissors. She'd learned early that being seen was dangerous. Men saw young girls on streets and got ideas. Ideas that made Thea's skin crawl, that made her bind her chest with ace bandages stolen from a pharmacy, that made her keep her voice low and her head down. So she made herself a ghost. The afternoon sun hammered down on her shoulders. Sweat trickled down her spine, soaking into the 3 layers of shirts she wore despite the heat. The layers hid how thin she'd become, how her ribs showed through skin like prison bars, how her collarbones jutted sharp enough to cut. A shadow fell across her cardboard sign. Thea tensed, every muscle in her 12-year-old body coiled tight, ready to run. She'd gotten good at running, sprint speed in 3 seconds flat. She knew which alleys had exits, which dumpsters had space behind them, which fire escapes had ladders that actually descended. But the shadow moved past without stopping. Just another person pretending she didn't exist. Thea exhaled slowly. Her hands shook. They always shook, now a constant tremor that had started the night her mother died and never stopped. The doctors would have called it trauma. Thea called it Tuesday. Across the street, Rosie's diner gleamed in the afternoon light. Red vinyl booths visible through smudged windows. The smell of frying bacon and fresh coffee drifting out every time the door opened. Thea's stomach clenched so hard it hurt. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Well, that wasn't entirely true. She'd found half a sandwich in a trash can yesterday. The bread had been soggy, the meat questionable, but she'd eaten it anyway. Hunger did that. It made you grateful for garbage. It made you forget you used to be a person who ate at tables, who had favorite foods, who complained when vegetables touched the mashed potatoes. The diner door opened with a cheerful jingle. Margot Hayes stepped out, wiping her hands on her apron. Mid-40s gray threading through dark hair pulled into a practical bun, eyes that missed nothing. She owned Rosie's, had owned it for 15 years, ever since her husband died and left her with a failing business and a daughter to raise alone. Thea watched her from across the street. Every Tuesday, the same routine. Margot would step outside during the afternoon lull, light a cigarette she'd quit smoking 3 years ago, but still carried for the ritual of it. Survey her little kingdom of cracked sidewalk and chipped paint. And every Tuesday, Margot would see Thea, really see her. Not through her, not past her, at her. Margot's eyes found Thea across 2 lanes of sporadic traffic. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Margot turned and went back inside the diner without a word. Thea's heart sank. Maybe today was different. Maybe Margot had finally decided the skinny street kid wasn't worth the trouble. Maybe the door jingled again. Margot emerged carrying a white paper bag. She waited for a gap in traffic, then crossed 5th Street with the confident stride of a woman who'd lived in Oakland her whole life and wasn't afraid of much. She stopped 3 feet from Thea, close enough to talk, far enough not to crowd. "Turkey Club," Margot said quietly, setting the bag down on the concrete beside Thea's cardboard sign. "Extra bacon, pickles on the side because I remember you don't like them touching the bread." Thea stared at the bag. Her throat closed up tight. When was the last time someone had remembered something about her? When was the last time anyone had cared about pickles? "Thank you," she whispered. The words came out scratchy, rough. She didn't use her voice much these days. Margot crouched down, knees cracking. How's the shoulder? 2 weeks ago, Thea had been jumped by 3 older boys who'd decided her corner was worth stealing. She'd fought back hard the way you fight when you've got nothing to lose. But 3 against 1 ended the way it always did. She'd escaped with a wrenched shoulder and bruises that still yellowed her ribs. Better, Thea lied. Margot's eyes said she knew it was a lie, but she didn't push. That was the thing about Margot. She helped without demanding explanations, fed without requiring stories, saw without insisting on being seen back. There's a shelter on Morrison Street, Margot said, her voice careful, gentle. They've got beds, hot showers, people who can help. Thea shook her head. She'd tried shelters. They asked questions, required parents or guardians, called social services when a 12-year-old showed up alone. And social services meant foster care, which meant homes where men looked at you wrong, where other kids stole your things, where you learned real quick that adults didn't always mean safety. I'm okay, Thea said. Another lie. Neither of them acknowledged it. Margot sighed. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a $20 bill, held it out between 2 fingers. I can't, Thea started. Yes, you can. Margot's voice went firm. Take it. Buy yourself something. Socks, soap, whatever you need. Thea's hand trembled as she took the money. $20. It felt like a fortune, like hope folded into paper. Why? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Why do you help me? Margot was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried weight. Because you remind me that one person can make a difference. Because kindness matters. Because you deserve to be seen. She stood, knees protesting again. Every Tuesday, Thea. You're here every Tuesday, and so am I. Thea watched her cross back to the diner. Watched her disappear through the jingling door back into the world of normal people with normal lives. People who had homes and families and futures. Thea opened the paper bag. The sandwich sat wrapped in wax paper, perfect and whole. Her hands shook worse now. Not from fear, from something else, something that felt dangerously close to crying. She took a bite. The bread was fresh, the turkey thick and real, the bacon crispy exactly how she liked it. Margot had remembered. Someone had remembered. Thea ate slowly, making it last, savoring every bite like it might be her last meal. On the streets, you learn not to take anything for granted. Not food, not kindness, not tomorrow. Movement caught her eye. A black Dodge Charger rolled down 5th Street. Slow. Too slow. The kind of slow that made every instinct Thea had developed over the 10 months scream danger. She'd learned to read cars the way most kids read comic books. Quickly, instinctively, with her life depending on getting it right. This car was hunting. The engine purred like a predator stalking prey. Tinted windows so dark they looked like holes cut into reality. License plate obscured with mud. It moved past her, past the diner, past the bodega on the corner. Then it circled back. Thea's hands tightened on her sandwich. Her heart kicked into a faster rhythm. The tremor in her fingers went still. Adrenaline did that. Burned through fear and left you sharp-edged and ready. The alley behind her was 12 feet away. She could make it in 2 seconds. Disappear into the maze of dumpsters and fire escapes before the car could stop. But the Charger rolled past her again, without slowing, as if she wasn't there, as if she wasn't the target. And then the diner door jingled. A little girl stepped out onto the sidewalk. 7 years old, blonde curls catching the afternoon sun like spun gold. She wore a pink jacket despite the August heat, sparkly sneakers that lit up when she walked, and the kind of innocent smile that belonged to children who still believed the world was good. Bryn Blackwood. Thea knew her name because every Tuesday at precisely 2:15, a mountain of a man would pull up to Rosie's diner on a Harley that sounded like controlled thunder. He'd go inside for cigarettes and coffee, and his daughter would wait by the window, sometimes stepping outside to feel the sun. Every Tuesday, Bryn would see Thea across the street, and every Tuesday, Bryn would wave. Not the hesitant, uncomfortable wave of adults who felt guilty for having more, not the pitying wave of do-gooders who wanted to feel charitable, just a simple, genuine wave, kid to kid, human to human, as if Thea was a real person. As if being homeless and 12 didn't make her invisible. That wave had kept Thea alive more than once, on nights when the cold bit through all her layers and she wondered if sleeping was worth waking up for. On days when hunger turned her stomach into a gnawing beast. On moments when she thought about walking into traffic because at least then it would be over. Bryn's wave reminded her that someone saw her. Someone knew she existed. Now Bryn stood on the sidewalk 20 feet away, crouching down to tie her shoelace. Pink jacket bright against gray concrete, tiny fingers fumbling with laces, humming something that might have been a Disney song. Completely unaware of the black Charger rolling toward her at 5 miles per hour, Thea's blood turned to ice water. The car wasn't hunting her, it was hunting Bryn. Time fractured into broken shards of hyper-awareness. Thea saw everything with terrible clarity. The Charger's window beginning to descend. Mechanical precision, inch by inch revealing darkness inside the vehicle. Bryn's shoelace slipping through her fingers again, her giggle of frustration. That innocent sound slicing through the afternoon like a knife. Through the diner's window she could see Bryn's father at the counter. Cade Blackwood, 6'4" of leather and tattoos and barely contained violence. Hellsangels Oakland chapter leader. The kind of man who made grown criminals cross the street to avoid eye contact. He was reaching for his wallet, paying for cigarettes and the cherry lollipop Bryn had begged for. His massive back turned to the window, to his daughter, to the death machine creeping up behind her. 3 seconds, maybe 4. That's all the time there was. Thea didn't think. Thinking was for people who had the luxury of time. Thinking was for people who had options. Thinking was for people whose lives mattered enough to preserve. Thea had none of those things, but Bryn did. Bryn had a father who loved her. A home to go to. Birthdays to celebrate. A future full of possibility. She had sparkly shoes and favorite songs, and the kind of childhood that came with waving at street kids because kindness was just something you did. She had everything Thea had lost. Everything worth saving. Thea's legs moved before her brain caught up. The sandwich fell from her hands. The $20 bill fluttered away on a breeze she didn't feel. Her worn sneakers 2 sizes too big and held together with duct tape pounded against concrete. 12 years old. 73 pounds of nothing. Charging straight toward a gun barrel. Bryn, her voice cracked. Raw. Desperate. Tearing from her throat with 10 months of accumulated loneliness and fear behind it. Bryn looked up. Confusion spread across her innocent face like spilled milk. Her green eyes the same shade as her father's met Thea's for one brief eternal moment. The car window was halfway down now, metal glinted in the shadows. A gun barrel black as nightmares, angling toward the little girl in the pink jacket. Thea's lungs burned, her vision tunneled. The world reduced itself to one simple equation. Her body between that gun and that little girl. Nothing else existed. Not her fear, not her survival instincts, not the voice in her head screaming that she was going to die, not the knowledge that she was nobody, nothing a ghost that Oakland would forget before her body went cold. None of it mattered. Bryn mattered. The first shot exploded through the air like thunder splitting the sky. Thea hit Bryn with the full force of her sprint, her scrawny arms wrapped around the smaller girl's frame. She twisted mid-impact, turning her body to take the fall. They crashed onto the sidewalk together in a tangle of limbs. Thea's back scraped against concrete. Her head bounced once, twice. Stars exploded behind her eyes. But she held on, curled herself around Bryn like a shield, made her body a wall between the 7-year-old and the gun that wanted her dead. The second shot came a heartbeat later. White-hot agony punched through Thea's left shoulder blade. The bullet tore through muscle and tissue, driving deep, before erupting somewhere near her collarbone in an explosion of pain so intense her vision went white. She'd broken her arm once falling from a fire escape while running from older boys. This was worse, infinitely worse. Like someone had driven a railroad spike through her body and lit it on fire. Like every nerve ending had been stripped bare and electrified. A scream tore from her throat. Animal, raw, the sound of a child's pain. Bryn shrieked beneath her, high-pitched, terrified, thrashing, not understanding why this strange homeless girl had tackled her, not comprehending that the loud bangs were gunshots meant to end her life. Thea held tighter, even as warmth spread across her back. Too much warmth, sticky, wrong. Even as her vision blurred at the edges, even as darkness crept in like spilled ink across paper. She held on. The third shot sparked off the concrete inches from her head. Thea felt the heat of the bullet's passage against her cheek, felt sharp fragments of sidewalk spray across her face. But the shot missed. She'd done it. 3 bullets. None had touched Bryn. Through the haze of pain and shock, Thea saw Bryn's face beneath her, those green eyes wide with terror. But alive, breathing, chest rising and falling with panicked sobs. The pink jacket was clean. No blood, no wounds. Safe. The sedan's engine roared to life with sudden urgency. Tires squealed against asphalt. Black rubber streaked across 5th Street as the shooter fled. The smell of burning rubber mixed with the copper tang of blood in Thea's mouth. But she barely registered any of it. The world was going soft around the edges, distant, like she was sinking into deep water while wearing stones for clothes. Her fingers went numb. The edges of her vision sparkled with strange lights that shouldn't exist in the middle of the day. Then came a sound that made her bones vibrate, even through the fog of shock. A roar, not an engine, something primal, full of rage and terror and love twisted into a weapon. The diner door didn't open. It exploded. The force cracked it against the brick wall with enough violence to shatter the upper glass panel. Heavy boots thundered against sidewalk. Boom, 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 like war drums announcing the end of the world. Massive hands grabbed Thea's shoulders. Fresh agony bloomed where the bullet had torn through tissue and bone. Thea's scream caught in her throat, coming out as a weak whimper. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but hurt. Bryn, the voice cracked with raw desperation. A sound Thea would never have imagined could come from Cade Blackwood. "Baby, are you hurt? Talk to me." "Daddy," Bryn sobbed. She scrambled out from beneath Thea's protective embrace. Her small hands pushed at Thea's chest. Thea's body rolled limply to the side. The sky tilted at a sickening angle, blue and white and too bright. Her head hit concrete. More stars. "The girl!" Bryn's voice was high, hysterical. "Daddy, the girl saved me. She jumped on me, and then there were loud noises, and she's bleeding so much. Daddy, she's bleeding." Faces swam into view above Thea. Cade Blackwood's weathered features twisted with something between fury and anguish. Bryn's tear-stained cheeks. Strangers gathering in a circle, their mouths opening and closing. Words that sounded underwater and far away. Someone was calling 911. Thea tried to speak, to tell them she was fine, that what mattered was Bryn being safe. But her tongue felt thick and useless, swollen to 3 times its normal size. The words tangled in her throat and died there unspoken. Cade's hands moved to Thea's wound, applied pressure. The pain exploded fresh and blinding. So intense her back arched off the concrete. A scream tore from her throat. Animal beyond words. "Stay with me, kid." Cade's command split the air with military precision. His scarred hands covered in faded prison tattoos and old burns pressed down hard, making the bleeding worse before it could get better. "You hear me? Stay with me. Don't you dare die on me." Thea's eyes found Bryn through the haze. The 7-year-old clutched her father's leather vest with both hands, her small body shaking violently. Blood stained the sleeve of her pink jacket. Thea's blood. But Bryn was standing, breathing, her chest rising and falling with panicked sobs. Alive. Worth it, Thea thought as the darkness finally swallowed her whole, pulling her down into a cold, empty place where the pain couldn't follow. The last thing she heard was Cade's voice. Rough. Broken. "Hold on, sweetheart. Please hold on." Then nothing. The world ceased to exist. Somewhere in that nothing, Thea drifted. She dreamed of her mother, not the hollow-eyed woman she'd become at the end, but the mother from before, the one who'd sung lullabies in a voice like honey, who'd made pancakes shaped like hearts on Sundays, who'd called her my brave girl and meant it. Claire Winters smiled at her from very far away. Thea tried to reach for her, but the distance between them was impossibly vast, an ocean of space and time and death. "Not yet, baby." Her mother's whisper came from everywhere and nowhere. "Not yet. You've got someone waiting for you." "I'm tired, Mama." Thea said, or thought, or dreamed. I know, sweet girl, but you're stronger than tired, stronger than pain. You always have been. I miss you. I miss you too, every second. But you can't come to me yet. That little girl needs you, and I think you need her too. The darkness shifted, changed, became something less cold, less empty. Warmth touched Thea's face. Not heat, not fire, just gentle warmth, like sunlight through a window on a winter morning. The world returned in fragments, beeping, steady, mechanical, like a metronome marking time. The sterile smell of disinfectant burning in her nostrils. Something plastic over her face. An oxygen mask pushing air into her reluctant lungs. Voices speaking in hushed, urgent tones somewhere beyond her closed eyelids. Pain, but distant now. Muted by chemicals flowing through her veins, turning agony into a dull, throbbing ache. Thea's eyelids felt like they'd been glued shut, each lash weighted down with lead. But she forced them open anyway, fighting against exhaustion that threatened to drag her back under. White ceiling tiles, fluorescent lights humming overhead, a hospital room. The realization hit her with surprising force. She was alive. An IV dripped clear fluid into her arm. Bandages wrapped her chest so tight she could barely breathe. Each inhalation required conscious effort. More wires connected her to machines that tracked her heartbeat, her oxygen levels, her blood pressure, monitoring whether she'd continue existing moment by moment. A private room, nicer than any place she'd slept in 10 months. Better than the abandoned warehouse where she'd been camping. Better than the shelter that always smelled like urine and despair. Kids like her didn't usually get second chances. The streets had taught her that lesson over and over, invisible, disposable, forgotten. When homeless people died, nobody investigated too hard. They became statistics. Jane Does buried in unmarked graves. But here she was, in a real bed with clean sheets, machines keeping track of her heartbeat like it actually mattered. Movement caught her eye. A nurse in pale blue scrubs adjusted something on one of the monitors. Her movements practiced, efficient. She had kind eyes, Thea noticed, the kind that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. The nurse noticed Thea was awake. Those eyes widened. Oh, she moved quickly to the bedside. You're up. Let me get the doctor. Wait, Thea's voice came out as a raspy whisper, her throat raw, like she'd been screaming. Maybe she had been. During surgery, the nurse paused, patient, present. The girl, Thea managed. Each word hurt. Bryn, is she? The nurse's expression softened immediately, transformed her professional mask into something genuinely warm. She's fine. Not a scratch on her. Thanks to you. She squeezed Thea's hand gently, her fingers cool against fevered skin. You're a very brave young lady. The doctor said you're lucky to be alive. The bullet missed your lung by millimeters. Brave. The word felt foreign, like clothing meant for someone else. Thea had always thought of herself as a coward, running from fights, hiding from police, too scared to ask for help because the system felt more dangerous than the streets. But maybe throwing yourself in front of bullets earned you a different word. Maybe that was the dividing line between coward and hero. The nurse left to fetch the doctor, her shoes squeaking on the polished linoleum. Thea stared at the ceiling. Exhaustion pulled at her like a riptide. Her shoulder throbbed despite whatever painkillers they'd pumped into her system. Every breath sent sharp reminders through her chest that she'd been shot, that a piece of metal had torn through her body at hundreds of feet per second. But Bryn was alive. That was all that mattered, and that had to be enough. A sound filtered through the window, low and distant at first, then growing into something that made the glass rattle in its frame like teeth chattering. Motorcycles, dozens of them, no more than dozens. Thea turned her head toward the window, ignoring the spike of pain that lanced down her spine. Through the fourth-floor glass, she could see the hospital parking lot below, spreading out like a concrete ocean. Her breath caught in her damaged throat. They kept coming. Wave after wave of motorcycles rolling into the lot like an invading army, like locusts descending on a field. Leather vests caught the late afternoon sun. Chrome glinted and flashed, almost blinding. The hellsangels skull logo, that grinning death's head with wings repeated across a sea of broad backs. 20 bikes became 50. 50 became 100. Still they came. Engines rumbling in a bass note that Thea felt in her bones. The sound bypassed her ears and resonated straight in her chest cavity, made her ribs vibrate, made the machines around her bed hum in sympathy. Nurses rushed past her door, their calm professionalism cracking into alarm. Security guards spoke urgently into radios, their hands moving to belts where weapons might be holstered. The steady rumble of engines surrounded the building like rising floodwater. Thea's heart rate spiked. The monitor beside her bed beeped faster, the line jumping erratically. Her palms grew slick with sweat despite the hospital's aggressive air conditioning. Why were they here? What did they want? She'd saved one of their own. Sure, but this wasn't gratitude. Gratitude was a thank you card, maybe some flowers. This was something else entirely. Something that made hospital staff lock doors, made patients peer nervously from windows with faces pale as paper. 150 motorcycles now. Thea counted them, her mind clinging to numbers because numbers made sense when nothing else did. 175, 200. 200 Hell's Angels surrounding a hospital was not normal, was not safe, was not footsteps approached her room, heavy boots on linoleum, each step deliberate, purposeful. More than one set, many more. The door swung open with enough force to make it bang against the doorstop. A man filled the doorway. Not just filled, dominated, consumed, made the space seem small and inadequate. For the first time, Thea understood viscerally why they called him Iron. He wasn't just a man, he was a force of nature compressed into human form. 6'4" of muscle and scars and hard years. His face was an unreadable mask of weathered skin and sharp edges. Each line told stories of violence survived, of battles won and lost, of a life lived on the edge of civilization where normal rules didn't apply. His leather vest hung open over a black t-shirt that revealed arms covered in tattoos, skulls wreathed in flames, dates that probably marked deaths, names of fallen brothers, a snake being strangled by skeletal hands. His eyes were steel gray, cold as winter. They locked onto Thea with an intensity that made her want to disappear into the mattress. Behind him, the hallway was packed with more Hell's Angels, dozens of them, shoulder to shoulder, silent as gravestones, watching, waiting, their faces hard and unforgiving, marked by violence and loyalty in equal measure. Not one of them smiled. Thea's throat went dry as bone. Her heart hammered so hard the monitor's beeping became frantic. Every instinct screamed danger. Run, hide, disappear. But there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and she was so tired of disappearing. Cade Blackwood took 3 steps into the room. Each footfall seemed to echo despite the carpeted floor. He stopped beside the bed, towering over her like a mountain of leather and muscle. This was it. The moment the fairy tale ended, the moment reality crashed back in like a freight train. Maybe the club didn't want witnesses. Maybe saving Bryn had been seen as interference in something bigger, something a 12-year-old street kid couldn't understand. Maybe they'd come to finish what the shooter started. His massive hand reached out, moving toward her throat. Thea flinched, couldn't help it, hated herself for showing fear, for being weak when she'd been brave just hours ago. But Cade didn't strike. His scarred hand covered in tattoos and old burn marks landed gently on her uninjured shoulder. The touch was surprisingly tender, almost paternal. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion Thea hadn't expected. Thick with something that sounded suspiciously like tears being held back. "You saved my daughter's life, kid." Thea swallowed hard, her Adam's apple bobbing against her damaged throat. "Is she okay?" "Not a scratch." Cade's jaw clenched so hard Thea heard his teeth grind together. A single tear traced down his weathered cheek, cutting through road dust and disappearing into his gray-streaked beard. "You took bullets meant for her. A 12-year-old kid with nothing. No family, no home, no reason to give a damn about anyone. And you threw yourself into gunfire for my little girl." Thea's voice cracked like breaking glass. "I couldn't let her die. She's always nice to me. She waves every Tuesday, like I'm a real person. Not just," she couldn't finish, "not just trash. Not just another invisible homeless kid waiting to become a statistic." Cade's expression shifted. Something dangerous flickered behind his eyes, not directed at Thea, but at someone else. Something. A promise of violence and retribution that spoke of bodies buried in desert graves and debts paid in blood. He reached into his vest pocket, pulled out a photograph, placed it face down on Thea's bedside table with deliberate care. "Your family now," Kate said quietly, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. "The club voted, unanimous. You're under Hell's Angels protection." He paused, let that sink in. "But family means something in our world, kid. Family means enemies inherit your wars. Family means the people who want us dead now want you dead too." Thea's stomach dropped, her mouth went dry. "I don't understand." Cade's steel gray eyes bored into her with an intensity that felt like being x-rayed. "I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. Complete truth. Lives depend on it. Yours included." Thea nodded, fear coiling in her gut like a living thing with teeth. Cade flipped the photograph over with one thick finger. Thea's eyes tracked downward to the image. A grainy surveillance photo, black and white, printed on glossy paper. A man with a snake tattoo curling up his neck, the reptile's fangs disappearing behind his ear. Dead eyes that reflected no light, no humanity. A cruel smile that Thea had tried so hard to forget, that had haunted her through 10 months of nightmares. Her blood turned to ice water in her veins. Her hands began to shake, uncontrollably, rattling the IV line. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps that made her wounded chest scream in protest. The hospital room spun sickeningly, tilting on an axis that shouldn't exist. "Recognize him?" Cade asked, his voice deadly calm. Thea's hands clutched the bedsheet so hard her knuckles went white. Her entire body trembled now. Shock and recognition and terror mixing into something that threatened to drown her. Because she did recognize that face. She'd seen it in her nightmares for 10 months. Standing over her mother's body the night she overdosed. The man who'd smiled while Claire Winters died. The man who'd looked at 12-year-old Thea cowering in a closet and said, "Run, little girl, run before I change my mind about loose ends." Thea choked on the words, her voice breaking into pieces. Tears burned her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. "That's the man who killed my mom." Cade's face hardened into something carved from granite. Behind him, the Hell's Angels in the hallway shifted, leather creaking, chains rattling. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "His name is Declan Crane," Cade said quietly. "He's the enforcer for the Serpents, a rival gang that's been trying to push us out of Oakland for 2 years. He paused. His hand tightened on Thea's shoulder. "And kid, he wasn't trying to kill my daughter today. He was trying to kill you." The words hung in the air like poison gas, seeping into Thea's lungs with every shallow breath. Declan Crane wasn't hunting Bryn. He was hunting a 12-year-old homeless girl who'd watched her mother die and had nowhere left to run. "I don't..." Thea's voice cracked. "Why would he want me dead? I'm nobody." Cade's expression darkened. He pulled a chair close to the hospital bed, its legs scraped against tile. "You witnessed something 10 months ago, something the Serpents can't afford to have surface." He sat, making himself less imposing, less terrifying. "Your mother, Claire Winters, she was one of their dealers. But she got sloppy, started skimming product, feeding her own habit instead of making them money." Thea flinched at her mother's name. Claire Winters. Once upon a time, she'd been mom. She'd been Sunday morning pancakes and birthday cakes shaped like hearts. Then the drugs had eaten her alive from the inside, turned her into a stranger wearing her mother's face. "Crane came to collect a debt," Cade continued, his voice low, measured. "But you were there that night. You saw his face. You saw what he did. That makes you a witness to murder, kid. And witnesses don't survive long in our world." The memory crashed over Thea like a wave. Her mother's apartment, the smell of chemicals and decay, the shouting. She'd hidden in the closet like her mother had taught her, pressing her eye to the crack between the door and frame. She'd seen everything. Declan's snake tattoo stretching as he grabbed her mother's throat, the needle he'd forced into her arm, filled with something that made her eyes roll back, the smile on his face as she convulsed and died. "I never told anyone," Thea whispered. "I was too scared. I just ran." "Doesn't matter." Cade's jaw clenched. The serpents operate on one principle: eliminate all threats. You being alive is a loose end they can't afford. They've been searching for you for 10 months. Today they found you. Thea's stomach twisted into knots. So Bryn getting shot would have just been what collateral damage bait. The word came from the doorway. Another Hell's Angel stepped forward. Older than Cade, silver threading through his beard, a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. They knew you'd be on 5th Street, the man said, his voice gravelly. They knew you had a soft spot for the kid. They gambled you'd do something stupid, like play hero. Axel's right, Cade confirmed. Crane knows how to manipulate people. He counted on your conscience getting you killed. His steel gray eyes softened slightly. But what he didn't count on was you actually succeeding, or me arriving in time to see which direction he fled, or my daughter remembering enough details to ID the vehicle. Thea processed this information slowly, her pain medication fogged brain struggling to keep up. So what happens now? The question hung in the air for 3 long heartbeats. Cade stood, his massive frame blocking out the fluorescent lights overhead. Now you're under Hell's Angels' protection. 200 brothers out there in that parking lot, every single one of them ready to die before they let the serpents touch you. He paused, let that sink in. You saved my daughter's life. That creates a debt. In our world, debts get paid. You protected my family. So my family protects you. It's not negotiable. Thea wanted to argue, wanted to say she'd just done what anyone would do, but the words died in her throat, because she knew they weren't true. Dozens of people had walked past her on those streets for 10 months. No one had protected her. No one had cared whether she lived or died. Until today. A commotion erupted in the hallway. Raised voices, a security guard trying to maintain order. Then a small figure pushed through the wall of leather-clad bikers, moving with the determination only a 7-year-old could muster. Daddy, Bryn's voice pierced through the tension. Let me through, Cade turned, his hard expression melting instantly. Baby, you shouldn't be. But Bryn was already past him, her small legs carrying her to Thea's bedside, her eyes red-rimmed from crying, her blonde curls disheveled. She clutched a piece of paper in both hands, crumpled from her tight grip. You saved me, Bryn said simply, looking up at Thea with an intensity that made her heart ache. She climbed onto the chair Cade had vacated, making herself tall enough to see Thea properly. She unfolded the paper, a drawing made with crayons, depicting a stick figure girl with a cape standing in front of a smaller stick figure girl. Hearts floated around them in red crayon. At the top, in uneven letters, My hero Thea. Thea felt something crack inside her chest. That had nothing to do with bullet wounds. When was the last time someone had called her a hero? When was the last time anyone had drawn her a picture? When was the last time she'd felt like she mattered? Thank you, Thea managed, her voice thick with emotions she couldn't name. Bryn smiled, that innocent expression transforming her tear-stained face into pure sunshine. Daddy says you're going to live with us now. Is that true? Thea's eyes shot to Cade, questions exploding in her mind. The massive biker crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. Can't protect you if you're living on the streets, kid. The serpents have eyes everywhere. You'll stay at my place until we figure out a permanent solution. I can't, Thea started. I don't want to be a burden. You think taking in a 12-year-old who took bullets for my daughter is a burden? Cade's eyebrow arched. Kid, you've got a lot to learn about family, about what it means to be part of something bigger than yourself. Axel stepped forward from the doorway. The club's already voting on it. By the time you're discharged, it'll be official. You'll be under Hell's Angels' protection. Protected, provided for, safe, safe. The word felt foreign. Thea had forgotten what safety felt like. 10 months of looking over her shoulder, of sleeping with one eye open, of knowing any moment could be her last. And now these dangerous men were offering her sanctuary. What? Thea whispered. Why do all this for me? Cade's expression softened. He sat on the edge of the hospital bed, careful not to jostle Thea's injuries. You know what my daughter said to me after the paramedics took you away? His voice grew rough with emotion. She said, Daddy, that girl is all alone and she still saved me. We have to save her back. Thea felt tears burning her eyes. She blinked them back furiously, refusing to cry in front of these hardened men. 7 years old, Kate continued, and she understands loyalty better than most adults. You showed her what real courage looks like, what sacrifice means. He paused. I'll be damned if I let the serpents erase that lesson by putting you in the ground. Bryn reached out, took Thea's hand, her small fingers warm against cold skin. You're my best friend now, she announced, with the absolute certainty only children possess. Best friends don't leave each other. Before Thea could respond, Axel's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, his expression darkening as he read the screen. Boss, we've got movement. Serpents spotted 3 blocks from the hospital, 6 bikes, all wearing colors. The temperature in the room plummeted. Cade stood slowly, his entire demeanor shifting from protective father to predator. How many of our guys outside? 200 and counting, Axel replied. More arriving every 10 minutes. Word spread fast. Good. Cade's voice dropped to something cold. Lethal. Let them come. Let them see what happens when they threaten Hell's Angels family. Thea's heart hammered against her ribs. They're coming here now. They're testing us, Axel explained, seeing if we're serious about protection, trying to gauge our numbers. Response time. Cade moved to the window, peeling back the curtain. Thea followed his gaze to the parking lot below. The sea of motorcycles had organized itself into defensive positions. Bikers stood in groups, leather vests bearing the Hell's Angels insignia, some with their hands resting casually on concealed weapons. They looked like an army preparing for war. What happens if they attack? Thea asked, her voice small. Cade let the curtain fall. He turned back to her, his steel gray eyes burning with an intensity that made her breath catch. Then Oakland sees what happens when someone threatens a Hell's Angels family. The casual way he said it sent chills down Thea's spine. Axel's phone buzzed again. He answered, listened for 30 seconds, then ended the call. They're circling, haven't committed yet, just watching. Let them watch, Cade said quietly. Every minute they wait is another 10 brothers arriving. By midnight, we'll have 500 bikes surrounding this hospital. They know the math. They know they can't win. Bryn squeezed Thea's hand tighter. Don't worry, she whispered. My daddy's the toughest person in the whole world. He won't let anyone hurt you. Thea looked at this little girl who barely knew her, offering comfort with the absolute faith children have before the world teaches them doubt. Then she looked at Cade, this terrifying man who'd built his reputation on violence, but cried over his daughter's safety. Then at Axel and the wall of leather-clad bikers visible through the doorway, all standing guard over a homeless kid they'd never met before today. Why me? Thea asked again, needing to understand. Of all the people you could protect, all the causes you'd fight for, why am I worth starting a war? Cade's expression softened. He placed one massive hand on Thea's uninjured shoulder. Because 10 months ago, when your world ended, you didn't become bitter. You didn't become cruel. You stayed human enough to risk everything for a little girl you barely knew. He paused. That kind of heart is rare, kid. Worth protecting, worth fighting for. Through the window, engines rumbled. More Hell's Angels arriving, the sound building like approaching thunder. And Thea Winters, who'd been invisible for 10 months, finally understood. She'd been seen. She'd been found. She mattered. For the first time since her mother died, Thea let herself believe that maybe tomorrow was worth living for. 3 days passed in a haze of morphine and antiseptic. Thea drifted between sleep and waking, never fully anchored in either world. Doctors came and went with clipboards and concerned expressions. Nurses changed bandages with gentle hands. Police officers asked questions she couldn't quite focus on answering. But through it all, one constant remained. Bryn. The 7-year-old had claimed the chair beside Thea's hospital bed like a tiny sentinel. She brought drawings. 17 of them, by the third day, each one more elaborate than the last. Stick figures evolved into scenes. Thea and Bryn holding hands. A house with a red door. 3 people under a smiling sun that Bryn labeled family in crooked letters. This one's you, Bryn said on the morning of day 4, pointing to the tallest stick figure. And that's me. And that's Daddy. We all live together and nobody's ever sad. Thea stared at the crayon rendering of a life she'd never imagined having. It's perfect. I know. Bryn's confidence was absolute. She climbed into the hospital bed, careful to avoid Thea's bandaged shoulder. The doctor says you can leave today. Daddy's getting everything ready. Ready for what? For you to come home, silly. Home. The word felt strange in Thea's mouth. Foreign, like a language she'd forgotten how to speak. The door opened. Kate entered, followed by a woman Thea recognized immediately. Margot Hayes, still in her diner apron, carrying a duffel bag. Hey, sweetheart, Margot said softly. Her eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying recently. Brought you some things. She set the bag on the bed, unzipped it. Inside were clothes, real clothes, not the oversized cast-offs Thea had been wearing for 10 months. Jeans that might actually fit. T-shirts in colors that weren't stained or torn. A jacket, socks, underwear still in the package. Thea's throat closed up. I guessed on sizes, Margot continued, her voice determinedly cheerful. But we can exchange anything that doesn't work. I can't pay you back, Thea whispered. Good thing I'm not asking you to. Margot sat on the edge of the bed. Honey, I've been watching you slowly disappear for 10 months. Watching you get smaller and quieter and more invisible every Tuesday. I tried to help how I could, but... Her voice broke. I should have done more. Should have called at someone. Should have... You fed me, Thea interrupted. Every Tuesday, you saw me when everyone else looked away. You remembered I don't like pickles, touching the bread. Margot's eyes filled with tears. That's the bare minimum of human decency. It kept me alive. The words hung in the air between them. Truth naked and raw. Cade cleared his throat. Doctors cleared you for discharge, but you're not going back to the streets. We've got a place set up. Secure location. You'll be safe there while we figure out next steps. Next steps, Thea asked. The serpents aren't going to stop looking for you, not after what happened. We need to get you somewhere they can't find you until we can end this permanently. How do you end something like this permanently? Cade's expression darkened. You let me worry about that. Your job is to heal. Stay alive. Let us protect you. Bryn wrapped her arms around Thea's waist. And play with me. That's your job, too. Despite everything, Thea smiled. An hour later, Thea stood in the hospital bathroom. Margot had helped her into the shower, gently washing 10 months of streets from her skin and hair. The water had run gray at first, then brown, then finally clear. Margot's hands were careful as they worked shampoo through Thea's chopped hair, massaging her scalp, rinsing with warm water. The simple act of being cared for made Thea's chest ache. My mama used to wash my hair, Thea whispered, her voice echoing off tile. Before, when things were good. Margot's hands never stopped their gentle work. What was she like, your mama? Before. Thea's throat tightened. She made pancakes, shaped like hearts. She sang while she cooked. She called me her brave girl. What happened to her? The question was gentle. No pressure, but Thea found herself answering anyway. Drugs, they started small. Pills for her back, then stronger pills, then things that needed needles. She tried to hide it from me, but you can't hide something like that in a one-bedroom apartment. Margot's hands moved to condition Thea's hair, working through tangles with patient fingers. The man in the picture, Declan, he was her dealer. When she couldn't pay, when she'd used up everything she was supposed to sell, he came to collect. Thea's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I watched him kill her, force the needle in her arm. Too much, way too much. She didn't even fight, just stopped, breathing. And he smiled the whole time. Margot turned off the water, wrapped Thea in a towel that was clean and soft, then pulled her into a careful hug, mindful of injuries, but firm, real. I'm so sorry, baby, she murmured. So sorry you had to see that. So sorry you've been alone. Thea let herself be held, let herself cry. Great gulping sobs that tore from her chest. 10 months of grief pouring out, and Margot held her through all of it. When the storm finally passed, Thea pulled back, wiping her face. I must look awful. You look like someone who's been carrying too much for too long, Margot replied, and who finally found a safe place to set it down. Margot helped Thea dress, a pale blue t-shirt that fit perfectly, jeans that didn't hang off her hips, clean socks, sneakers that were actually her size. Then Margot sat her down and brushed her damp hair with gentle strokes, the kind of care a mother gives, the kind Thea hadn't felt in almost a year. "There," Margot said softly, tucking a strand behind Thea's ear. "You look like a girl again, not a ghost." Thea met her eyes in the mirror. "Thank you for everything." "That's what family does, honey. We take care of each other." They left the hospital through a service entrance. Security measure, Kate explained. Less exposure, fewer opportunities for serpents to take another shot. The parking lot still held over 100 motorcycles. A smaller force than 3 days ago, but impressive nonetheless. Bikers stood in clusters, smoking, talking in low voices. They all straightened when Kate emerged with Thea and Bryn. A cheer went up, rough voices calling out. "That's her, the kid who saved Bryn. Tough little thing, ain't she?" Thea's face burned. She wasn't used to attention, wasn't used to being seen, let alone celebrated. Bryn grabbed her hand. "Don't be scared. They're happy you're okay." A windowless van waited at the curb. Axel stood beside it, arms crossed. When he saw Thea, something softened in his scarred face. "Kid," he said, a greeting and acknowledgement in one word. "Hi," Thea managed. "You good to travel?" She nodded, lying. Her shoulder throbbed. Her ribs ached with every breath, but she'd survived worse, and staying in one place felt dangerous. Exposed. The van's interior was surprisingly comfortable. Bench seats with actual cushions, bottles of water in cup holders. Bryn climbed in first, pattering Thea to sit beside her. Margot took the seat across, Kate and Axel up front. As they pulled out of the parking lot, Thea watched through tinted windows as the remaining motorcycles fired up, forming an escort. Protection. For her. The thought was still surreal. They drove for what felt like hours, winding through Oakland, then out into surrounding areas Thea didn't recognize. The urban sprawl gave way to suburbs, then scattered houses, then nothing but trees. Bryn fell asleep against Thea's good shoulder, her breath warm and even, trusting. Margot caught Thea's eye, smiled softly. "She hasn't slept well since the shooting. Nightmares, but she seems calm with you." "I don't know why," Thea whispered. "I'm nobody special." "You threw yourself in front of bullets for her. I'd say that's pretty special." The van turned onto a dirt road. Gravel crunched under tires. Trees closed in on both sides, thick enough to block out most of the afternoon sun. They drove for another 10 minutes before a cabin appeared. 2 stories. Wood siding weathered to gray. Wraparound porch, isolated. No neighbors visible in any direction. Perfect for hiding. The van stopped. Cade killed the engine. "Welcome to the safe house," he said. Inside the cabin was sparse but functional. Worn furniture that had seen better decades. A kitchen with outdated appliances, curtains drawn tight across every window. But it was clean, warm, safe. 2 bedrooms upstairs, Kate explained. "Margot's got the one on the left. You girls take the one on the right. Axel and I will rotate watch downstairs." "Watch for what?" Thea asked. Kate's expression was grim. "For trouble. It's coming, kid. Question is when." Margot ushered both girls upstairs before Thea could ask more questions. The bedroom was small. 2 twin beds with handmade quilts, a dresser, a lamp, a window covered with blackout curtains. "It's not much," Margot apologized, "but it's yours. First time in a while you've had that, I'm guessing." Thea thought about the warehouse where she'd been sleeping, about cardboard and newspaper for blankets, about waking every hour to make sure nobody had found her. "It's perfect," she said. Bryn bounced on one of the beds. "This one's mine. That one's yours. We're roommates like real sisters." Sisters. The word lodged in Thea's chest, heavy and hopeful. Margot unpacked the duffel bag, setting folded clothes in the dresser, hanging the jacket in the small closet, creating order from chaos. "I'll let you girls get settled," she said. "Dinner in an hour. Nothing fancy, but it'll be hot and there'll be plenty." After she left, Thea sat carefully on her designated bed. The mattress gave under her weight. Soft. Clean. She ran her hand over the quilt. Someone had made this. Stitched it with care. Meant for it to keep someone warm. "Do you like it?" Bryn asked anxiously. "The room, I mean. I know it's small, but..." "I like it," Thea interrupted. "I like it a lot." Bryn's smile could have lit the entire cabin. That night after dinner, and after Margot had tucked them both into bed, Thea lay staring at the ceiling. Bryn was already asleep in the next bed over, breathing soft and even. Downstairs, she could hear low voices, Cade and Axel talking, planning, protecting, for her. Thea pulled the quilt up to her chin. It smelled like lavender, like someone cared enough to make things nice. For the first time in 10 months, Thea let herself believe she might actually survive this. The next few days fell into a rhythm. Wake up, eat breakfast with Bryn and Margot, endure bandage changes, play quiet games to keep Bryn entertained. Eat lunch, rest, dinner, sleep, normal, almost, except for the guns. Axel always had one within reach. Cade carried at least two at all times. The windows stayed covered, the doors stayed locked. Motorcycles came and went at irregular intervals, brothers checking in, bringing supplies, sharing intel. On the 8th day, everything changed. Thea woke to raised voices downstairs, angry, urgent. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Bryn, and crept to the top of the stairs. Can't be sure who, Axel was saying, but someone talked, someone inside the club. Who knew about this location? Cade's voice was ice cold. Only patched members, maybe 15 guys total. Then we've got a traitor. Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. What's the timeline? Cade asked. Hours, maybe less. If the serpents know where we are, then we move. Now. Where every safe house we have could be compromised. Then we make a stand here, call in everyone we can trust, set up a perimeter, and we pray we can hold until we figure out who's leaking. Thea's blood ran cold. She backed away from the stairs, moved quietly back to the bedroom. Bryn was still asleep, innocent, unaware. Because of Thea, this little girl was in danger again. Because of what Thea had seen, what she knew, what she represented, a loose end. Thea looked at the window, at the blackout curtains hiding escape routes. She could leave, sneak out, turn herself over to the serpents, end this before anyone else got hurt, before Bryn got hurt again. She was halfway to the window when a hand caught her arm. Margot stood in the doorway, still in her nightgown, hair loose around her shoulders, expression fierce. Don't even think about it, she whispered. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You think leaving will keep everyone safe. You think sacrificing yourself solves the problem. Margot pulled Thea away from the window, sat her down on the bed. Listen to me, honey. That's exactly what they want. They want you isolated, vulnerable, easy to eliminate. You run, you die, and then they come for Bryn anyway because she can identify the shooter. You leaving doesn't end this. It just makes it easier for them to win. But people are going to get hurt. People are already hurt. Ghost is dead. Others are wounded. Running won't bring them back. Staying means we fight together. Family. Thea's hands shook. I don't know how to fight. Then you learn, starting now. Margot stood, moved to the dresser, pulled out a small canister from the top drawer. Pepper spray, point, press, aim for the eyes. It'll buy you seconds to run. She set it on the bed, then pulled out a small knife in a leather sheath. Last resort, only if you have no other choice. Margot's eyes were deadly serious. You stab, you don't slash. Aim for soft spots. Throat, stomach, groin. Then you run and you don't look back. Thea stared at the weapons. I'm 12, and the men hunting you don't care. Age doesn't matter to people like Declan Crane. Innocence doesn't matter. All that matters is eliminating threats. Margot sat beside him again. I know this is terrifying. I know it's unfair. You should be worrying about homework and friends and what to wear to school, not about how to survive a gang war. She took Thea's trembling hands in hers. But this is the reality we're in, and I need you to be smart, be prepared, be ready to fight it if fighting is the only option left. Downstairs, heavy boots moved toward the basement, Cade's voice giving orders, setting up defensive positions. War was coming to the cabin in the woods, and Thea was the reason why. Night fell like a curtain. Axel positioned himself at the front window, rifle across his lap. Cade checked the back approach, the tree line, every possible angle of attack. 2 more Hell's Angels arrived as backup. Brothers Cade trusted absolutely. Margot kept the girls upstairs. Bryn sensed the tension but didn't fully understand it. She cuddled close to Thea, seeking comfort. "Are the bad men coming?" she whispered. Thea didn't lie. "Maybe." "I'm scared." "Me too." Bryn looked up at her. "But you're brave when you're scared. Daddy said so. He said being scared and doing it anyway is the bravest thing there is." Thea held her tighter. "Your daddy's pretty smart." "The smartest," Bryn agreed, then softer. "Will you protect me again if they come?" "Yes," Thea said without hesitation. "Always." The word felt like a promise, a vow. Around midnight, the sound came. Engines, distant at first, then growing closer. Not the familiar rumble of Harley-Davidsons, something different. Higher pitched, aggressive. Cade's voice cut through the cabin. "Contact. 3 vehicles. 6 bikes. Moving fast." Axel chambered around. "Positions." Margot grabbed both girls. "Basement. Now." They thundered down the stairs, through the kitchen. Down another set of stairs into a musty basement, lit by a single bulb. In the corner, a rough opening had been carved into the foundation. A tunnel, leading into darkness. "If I say run," Margot instructed, "you go through there, don't stop. Don't look back. There's a service road 1/2 mile through the woods. Keys will be in a truck. You drive until you find help." "I can't drive," Thea said. "Then you learn fast." Bryn clung to Thea's hand. "I don't want to run. I want Daddy." "Your daddy's keeping us safe," Margot said firmly. "Our job is to let him do that." Above them, the engines cut off. Silence dropped like a stone. Then a knock. 3 polite beats on the front door. A voice called out, smooth, confident, carrying easily through wooden walls. "We're just here to talk. No need for anyone to get hurt tonight." Thea's blood turned to ice. She knew that voice. Declan Crane. Axel's response was curt. "You can talk through the door." A soft chuckle. "Fair enough. We're looking for something that belongs to us. A little girl, witness to an unfortunate accident. We'd like her back." "She's not yours to take." "See, that's where we disagree. She saw something she shouldn't have. That makes her our problem to solve. She's under Hell's Angels protection. That makes her your problem to walk away from." Silence, calculating. "You know how this ends, don't you?" Declan's voice hardened, steel beneath velvet. "We can't let her talk. We can't let her testify. Hand her over and everyone else walks away. Your little princess keeps drawing her pictures. The waitress goes back to her diner. Nobody else has to die." Thea's hands shook. She started toward the stairs. Margot caught her. "No." "He's right," Thea whispered. "This is about me. If I go, you die. And then they kill the rest of us anyway because we know too much." "You don't know that. I know men like Declan Crane. I've seen them before. They don't make deals. They make examples." Above them, Axel's voice. "You've got 10 seconds to leave. Then we start shooting." "That's disappointing," Declan said. Then the world exploded. The front window shattered first. Glass sprayed inward like deadly rain. Gunshots cracked. Splintering wood. Thea screamed. Margot shoved both girls toward the tunnel. "Run now." "I won't leave you," Thea cried. Another window exploded. Boots crashed onto the porch. The front door shuddered under impact. A serpent appeared at the top of the basement stairs. Gun raised, eyes wild. Margot stepped in front of the girls. "You'll have to go through me." The man laughed. "Lady, that's not the threat you think it is." He started down the stairs. Thea's hand closed around something cold. Metal, the pipe she'd noticed earlier, leaning against the washing machine. Old, rusty, heavy. She didn't think, didn't hesitate, just moved. Up the stairs, past Margot's grabbing hands, pipe raised high. The serpent saw her coming. Swung his gun toward her. Too slow. Thea brought the pipe down with every ounce of strength her 12-year-old body possessed. It connected with his temple with a sickening crack. The man's eyes rolled back. He dropped, unconscious before he hit the stairs. Thea stood over him, breathing hard, the pipe still clutched in her shaking hands. She'd hurt someone, actually hurt them. The realization made her knees weak. "Thea," Margot's voice was sharp. "Basement now." But Thea couldn't move, couldn't process what she'd just done. Then a new sound cut through the K, a roar, deep, powerful, unmistakable. Harleys, dozens of them. Cade's reinforcements had arrived. The battle outside intensified, shouts, gunfire, the meaty thud of fists on flesh. Serpents caught between the defenders inside and the Hell's Angels pouring in from outside. Margot grabbed Thea, pulled her back down to the basement. Bryn was crying, terrified. Thea dropped the pipe and wrapped her arms around the little girl. "It's okay," she whispered, lying. "We're okay." The fight raged for what felt like hours but was probably minutes. Then gradually the gunfire tapered off. The shouts became fewer. Finally silence. Footsteps on the basement stairs. Heavy, deliberate. Margot positioned herself in front of the girls again, ready to fight. But it was Cade who emerged. Blood on his knuckles, a cut above his eye, vest torn, but alive. His eyes found Bryn first, then Thea. Relief washed over his features. "You're okay," he breathed. "Thank God you're okay." He crossed the basement in 3 strides, dropped to his knees, pulled both girls into a crushing embrace. "Daddy," Bryn sobbed. "The bad men came and Thea hit one with a pipe, and I was so scared." Cade's eyes met Thea's over Bryn's head. "You protected them." It wasn't a question. Thea nodded, unable to speak. Cade's expression transformed, something fierce and proud. "My daughters," he said quietly. "Both of you." He stood, helped Margot to her feet. "It's over. For now, we got 6 serpents, 3 dead, 3 in custody." Declan escaped. "Of course he did," Margot muttered. "But we wounded him, and we sent a message." Cade's voice hardened. "You come for Hell's Angels, family, you pay in blood." Axel appeared at the top of the stairs. "Boss, police are 5 minutes out. Ambulance too. We need to get our story straight." Cade nodded, looked at Thea. "You defended yourself. That's all you say. A man came at you, you grabbed the nearest weapon, self-defense, understand?" Thea understood. She was learning the rules of this new world, the language of survival when survival meant violence. "Okay," she whispered. Later, after the police had left and the ambulances had taken the wounded, Cade gathered everyone in the living room. What was left of it, bullet holes pocked the walls, glass littered the floor. The front door hung crooked on its hinges. "We're moving locations," he announced. "Somewhere more secure. Somewhere I know for certain hasn't been compromised." "Your house," Axel asked. "My house. Fortified, cameras, full security system, and enough brothers rotating through that an army couldn't get to the girls." He looked at Thea. "I'm making this official. Emergency vote. But I already know how it'll go. Thea Winters, you're not just under protection anymore." He paused, let the weight of the moment build. "Your family. Legal papers are being drawn up. Adoption, if you'll have us." Thea's world tilted. "Adoption? You need a home. Bryn needs a sister. I need to keep both my daughters safe." His voice softened. "And maybe we all need each other, if you're willing." Thea looked at Bryn, who was nodding enthusiastically, bouncing on her toes, then at Margot, who was crying, smiling through tears, then at the wall of Hell's Angels behind Cade. Men who'd bled to protect her, who'd shown up when it mattered. "Yes," Thea whispered, then louder. "Yes, I'm willing." Bryn launched herself at Thea. "Real sisters. We're going to be real sisters." And Thea, who'd been alone for 10 months, who'd been invisible and forgotten, and one step from death, held her new sister and let herself believe in family again. Outside, the sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. A new day, a new beginning. And for the first time since her mother died, Thea Winters had a last name that meant something. Winters Blackwood. She whispered it to herself, testing how it felt. It felt like home. Cade Blackwood's house wasn't what Thea expected. She'd imagined something dark, industrial, all leather and chrome and weaponry on display. The kind of place that screamed danger to anyone who approached. Instead, it was a 2-story Craftsman in East Oakland with a wraparound porch and flower boxes in the windows. Paint weathered but maintained. Lawn mowed. A basketball hoop in the driveway with a net that had seen better days. Normal, almost. Except for the security cameras, the reinforced doors, the Hell's Angels brothers who rotated through on 4-hour shifts, never leaving the girls unguarded. Bryn's mom picked the house. Kate explained as he carried Thea's duffel bag inside, the duffel that Margot had packed with new clothes. Everything Thea owned in the world fitting into one small bag. She wanted something that felt like a home, not a fortress. What happened to her? Thea asked quietly. Kate's expression went distant. Wrong place, wrong time. Crossfire from a dispute that had nothing to do with her. She was picking up groceries. Bryn was 3. He set the bag down, turned to face Thea. I promised myself that day I'd never let anyone hurt my daughter again. I built this club into something strong enough to protect what matters. And then you come along and throw yourself in front of bullets for her. His voice roughened with emotion. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. You're exactly the kind of sister Bryn deserves. Thea's throat closed up. I don't know how to be a sister or a daughter. I don't know what families do. Then we'll figure it out together. Bryn appeared at the top of the stairs. Thea, come see our room. It's got bunk beds. Our room. The words settled into Thea's chest like warmth spreading through cold water. The room was painted pale yellow. Morning light streamed through windows that faced the backyard. Bunk beds against one wall already made up with matching quilts. 2 dressers, a bookshelf filled with children's books and stuffed animals. Drawings taped to the walls, all of Bryn's recent artwork featuring stick figure sisters. I call top bunk, Bryn announced, then hesitated. Unless you want it, you're older, so maybe you get to pick. Thea smiled. Bottom bunk is perfect. Really okay good, because I like being up high. I can see everything from up there. Bryn climbed the ladder to demonstrate. See, I can see the whole room and out the window. And if you have nightmares, I can reach down and hold your hand. Something in Thea's chest cracked open. You do that? Of course, that's what sisters do. That first week passed in a blur of adjustment. Thea had her own dresser, her own clothes, a toothbrush that was hers alone. Margot came by daily with food, with comfort, with the kind of steady presence that made Thea feel anchored. But there were rules now, structure, things Thea hadn't experienced in 10 months. Bedtime at 9, breakfast at 8, showers every day, vegetables with dinner, no going outside without permission and an escort. The last rule chafed the most. Thea was used to freedom, harsh freedom, but freedom nonetheless. Now she felt caged, protected, but confined. I know it's hard, Cade said on day 5 when he found her staring longingly out the window. But until we deal with the serpents permanently, we can't risk exposure. How do you deal with them permanently? You let me worry about that. But Thea was learning to read the tension in Cade's shoulders. The hushed conversations that stopped when she entered rooms. The way hellsangels came and went at odd hours with grim expressions. War was still being waged, just not where she could see it. On day 7, a woman arrived. Mid-40s, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, carrying a leather bag that marked her as professional something. Thea, this is Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Kate introduced. She's a therapist who works with the county, but she also does private sessions. I thought it might help to have someone to talk to. Thea tensed. I don't need therapy. You witnessed your mother's murder. You lived on the streets for 10 months. You were shot protecting a 7-year-old, and now you're adjusting to a completely new life. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. Honey, everyone needs therapy after that. They sat in Cade's office, just the 2 of them. Sarah didn't push, didn't demand, just talked about normal things at first. Favorite colors, books, what Thea liked to eat. Then carefully she asked about Claire. And Thea, who'd been holding it together for so long, finally broke. She told Sarah everything, about her mother before the drugs, about watching her decline, about that October night and Declan's snake tattoo and the needle and the smile, about 10 months of being invisible, about Bryn's wave every Tuesday that kept her human, about the choice she'd made to throw herself in front of bullets. Sarah listened, never interrupted, never judged. When Thea finally ran out of words, Sarah handed her tissues and said something that changed everything. You know what I hear in your story, survival? Resilience, love. You could have become hard, cruel, closed off. Instead, you stayed open enough to risk your life for someone else's child. That's extraordinary, Thea. It didn't feel extraordinary. It just felt like the right thing to do. That's what makes it extraordinary, doing the right thing when it costs you everything. Sarah came 3 times a week after that, teaching Thea tools to manage the nightmares, the panic attacks, the hypervigilance that made every sound a threat. It helped, slowly, in small increments. But the fear never fully left, because Declan Crane was still out there. 3 weeks after the shooting brought new visitors. A woman in a Navy suit who introduced herself as Detective Sarah Morrison, and a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and an expensive watch. "This is James Wright," Detective Morrison said. "District Attorney. He'd like to talk to you about what you witnessed." They sat in the living room. Cade insisted on being present. Bryn was at Margot's diner, kept safely out of earshot. Wright got straight to business. "Thea, what you saw the night your mother died could be the key to putting Declan Crane away for life. But I need you to walk me through it. Every detail you remember." Thea's hands started shaking. "I don't want to remember." "I know, but sometimes the only way through trauma is straight through the middle of it." So Thea told them about hiding in the closet, about watching through the crack, about every horrible detail she'd tried so hard to forget. The snake tattoo, the needle, her mother's convulsions, Declan's smile, his words, "Run, little girl, run before I change my mind about loose ends." Wright took notes, recorded everything with Thea's permission. When she finished, he looked at her with something like admiration. "That's a powerful testimony. If you're willing to say this in court under oath, we can make sure Declan Crane never sees freedom again." When Thea whispered, "Thea, trial's set for 4 months from now, but we'll need to prep you. Court can be intimidating. Defense attorneys will try to discredit you, make you seem unreliable. We need to prepare for that." Cade's hands settled on Thea's shoulder, grounding, protective. "She won't be alone up there." "No," Wright agreed. "She won't. But it's still going to be hard." Thea thought about Bryn, about her new family, about the chance to make Declan pay for what he'd done. "I'll do it," she said, "whatever it takes." The prep sessions started the next week. Wright coached her on how to answer questions, how to stay calm under cross-examination, how to look at the jury instead of at Declan. "He'll try to intimidate you," Wright warned. "Stare at you, smile, make you feel small. You can't let him see it's working." Thea practiced, over and over, until the words came automatically, until she could recite her testimony without breaking down. But every night she dreamed of that snake tattoo, of dead eyes watching her, of a voice saying, "We'll finish this, little girl." 5 weeks after the shooting, everything changed again. The day started like any other. Thea woke to Bryn's cheerful chatter from the top bunk. They dressed together, Bryn in her school uniform. She'd returned to classes with heavy security. Thea in clothes for a day at home. She wasn't enrolled yet. "Too risky," Cade said. Maybe after the trial. Margot arrived to make breakfast, pancakes. Not shaped like hearts, but close enough to make Thea's chest ache with bittersweet memory. "Big day," Margot said. "Bryn's got show and tell. She's bringing the drawing you made together." Thea had helped Bryn draw a family portrait. 4 stick figures holding hands. Labels underneath: Daddy, Thea, Bryn, Margot. Family in Bryn's crooked letters. "Think the other kids will like it?" Bryn asked anxiously. "They'll love it," Thea assured her. At 2 o'clock, Cade's phone rang. He answered, listened, then went absolutely still. Thea knew immediately something was catastrophically wrong. When Cade's voice was arctic, "How many?" He listened more, his face draining of color. "I'm coming. Lock it down. Nobody in or out." He ended the call, looked at Thea with an expression that made her blood run cold. "Bryn's school. There was an incident at pickup." The world stopped spinning. "What kind of incident?" Margot asked. "Serpents. They grabbed her. Shot Brick. Wolf's in pursuit, but he lost them in traffic." Thea couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The room tilted sickeningly. "No, no, no, no." Cade grabbed her shoulders. "Listen to me. We're going to get her back. I've got every brother in Oakland looking. We'll find her." "This is my fault." Thea's voice broke. "They took her because of me. They took her because they're monsters. That's on them, not you." But Thea knew better, knew this was always the plan. The serpents couldn't get to her directly. So they'd taken the one thing that would make her come willingly. Cade's phone rang again. Unknown number, he answered on speaker. Declan Crane's voice filled the room. Smooth, confident, amused. Hello, Iron. I have something of yours. Blonde, 7 years old, scared out of her mind. Thea heard Bryn crying in the background. Daddy, Daddy, help me. Rage like nothing she'd ever felt consumed Thea, white hot and absolute. Let her go, Cade growled. This is between us. Oh, but it's not. It's about the little witness, the girl who saw too much. Here's the deal her for the kid. Straight trade. She comes alone. I see one biker, your daughter dies. Where? Pier 27, abandoned warehouse. 2 hours, clock's ticking. The line went dead. Kate immediately started making calls, organizing, planning. But Thea barely heard it. All she could think about was Bryn crying, terrified, alone with monsters. Because of her. I'm going, Thea said quietly. Cade stopped mid-sentence. Like hell you are. He wants me. This is the only way to keep Bryn safe. It's a trap. He'll kill you both. Maybe, but if there's even a chance he'll let her go, I have to take it. Margot stepped forward. Honey, you can't. She's 7. Thea's voice cracked. She's 7 and she's there because I exist. Because I saw something I shouldn't have. I can't let her die for that. I won't. Cade stared at her for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression. We do this smart. You go in wired, body armor under your clothes, tracker ejected subcutaneously, and we're shadows. 50 brothers surrounding that warehouse. He said alone. He doesn't get what he wants. Neither do we, but we stack the deck in our favor. Axel arrived 20 minutes later with equipment, body armor thin enough to hide under a hoodie, a wire so small it was nearly invisible, a tracker the size of a grain of rice that he injected into Thea's shoulder with practiced efficiency. This hurts you, we know exactly where you are, Axel said. We can be on you in 30 seconds. Thea nodded, too scared to speak. Margot helped her dress, hands shaking. You don't have to do this, baby. Yes, I do. She's my sister. Margot pulled her into a fierce hug. Then you come back. Both of you. You hear me? You come back. Cade knelt in front of Thea, at eye level, the way he had in the hospital. You're the bravest person I've ever met, he said quietly. Braver than men 3 times your age. But bravery doesn't mean you have to do this alone. He pressed something into her hand, small, metal, a pendant on a chain. Bryn's mother wore this, St. Christopher, patron saint of travelers, protection on journeys. His voice roughened. Both my daughters wear one now. Thea looked down at the pendant, worn smooth from years of touch. She fastened it around her neck, let it settle against her chest. I'm scared, she whispered. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just remember you're not alone. We're with you every step. The convoy formed, 50 motorcycles, but they'd peel off before the pier. Stay hidden, create a perimeter without being seen. Thea rode with Cade, pressed against his back, feeling his steadiness, his strength. Whatever happens, Cade said over the engine noise, you're my daughter, now and always. You come back to us. Thea held tighter, didn't trust herself to speak. They stopped 2 blocks from Pier 27. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the warehouse district, perfect for hiding, for ambushing, for dying. Cade helped Thea off the bike, checked her wire, her armor, then pulled her into a crushing embrace. 30 seconds, he murmured against her hair. That's all you need to survive. 30 seconds and we're there. Thea nodded against his chest. When she pulled back, 50 Hell's Angels were watching. These dangerous men who'd adopted a homeless girl as family, who were risking everything to save 2 children. Axel gave her a small nod. Bring our girl home, kid. Thea walked alone toward Pier 27, each step deliberate, fighting the urge to run, to hide, to disappear, but she'd been invisible for 10 months. She was done disappearing. The warehouse loomed ahead, massive, dark, windows broken out like missing teeth, the kind of place where bad things happened and nobody heard you scream. The main door stood open, waiting. Thea took a breath, touched the pendant at her throat, then stepped inside. The interior was vast, cavernous, shipping containers stacked haphazardly, pools of shadow and dim light from holes in the roof. the smell of rust and seawater and decay. In the center, illuminated by a shaft of dying sunlight, was Bryn, tied to a chair, face streaked with tears, pink jacket torn, but alive, breathing. When she saw Thea, her eyes went wide. Thea, no, you shouldn't have come. He's going to... Quiet little princess. Declan Crane stepped from behind a shipping container, snake tattoo vivid against his neck. The same cruel smile from 10 months ago, from Thea's nightmares. Right on time, he said. I knew you'd come. Heroes always do. Can't help themselves. Thea's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. Let her go. I'm here. That's what you wanted. Declan circled slowly, predator assessing prey. You know what I remember about that night, your mother begging? Please, she said. I have a daughter, a little girl who needs me. He laughed. I looked her in the eye and said, then you should have thought of that before you stole from us. Pumped her so full of H she never stood a chance. Rage burned through Thea's fear. You murdered her. I eliminated a problem, just like I'm about to eliminate another one. He snapped his fingers. 15 men emerged from behind containers. Serpents, all armed, all watching with dead eyes. Thea's blood ran cold. You said you'd let Bryn go. I lied. See, here's the thing about witnesses. You never leave loose ends. Your mother learned that. Now you will too. He pulled a gun, aimed it at Bryn. Thea didn't think, just moved. Charged across the warehouse floor. Threw herself at Declan before he could fire. They crashed into a container. Metal boomed. The gun went off. The bullet sparked off steel somewhere to the left. Bryn screamed. Thea grabbed for the gun. Declan backhanded her. Pain exploded across her face. She tasted blood. But she held on, fingers wrapped around the gun barrel, twisting, fighting, using every ounce of street fighting desperation she'd learned in 10 months of survival. Declan was stronger, bigger, meaner. He slammed her against the container. Once. Twice. Her vision swam. Stupid girl, he snarled. You really thought you could save her. Then the warehouse exploded with sound, not gunfire, engines. Motorcycles pouring through every entrance. Headlights blazing. Hellsangels flooding in like an avenging army. The serpents turned, tried to defend, but they were outnumbered 3-1. Chaos erupted, fists and gunfire and shouting. The warehouse became a war zone. Declan's grip on Thea loosened. He turned toward the fight, calculating, realizing he'd been outplayed. Thea didn't waste the opportunity. She drove her knee up, connected with his groin. Declan doubled over. She grabbed the gun, twisted it from his hands, then swung it like a club, connected with his temple. Declan staggered, blood streaming from his hairline. Thea ran for Bryn, fumbled with the ropes, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip. It's okay, she gasped. I've got you. You're okay. Behind you, Bryn screamed. Thea turned. Declan was back on his feet, gun recovered, aimed at her head. You know what? His voice was conversational, almost friendly. I'm going to enjoy this. So will I. Cade's voice, from behind Declan. The biker leader stood there, gun raised, expression carved from ice. Declan froze. Iron. You made 3 mistakes, Cade said quietly. You came after my daughter, you came after my city, and you thought you could win. If you shoot me, you're no better than I am. I know. For one terrible moment, Thea thought Cade would do it, would pull the trigger, would become the thing he fought against. But he lowered the gun, slightly. Lucky for you, I've got daughters to raise, and they need to see there's another way. Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. You'll rot in prison, Cade continued, where monsters like you belong, and every day for the rest of your life, you'll know a 12-year-old girl beat you. Declan lunged, not at Cade, at Thea. One last desperate attempt. Thea raised the gun, her hands steady now, aimed at his chest. Stop, she said. Declan kept coming. I said stop. She pulled the trigger. The gun clicked. Empty. Declan smiled. Brave try, little girl, but Cade's fist connected with Declan's jaw. A punch with 45 years of violence behind it. Declan dropped like a stone, unconscious before he hit the concrete. Thea stood there, gun still raised. shaking from head to toe. "It's over," Cade said gently. "You can put it down now." Thea lowered the gun, let it slip from her fingers. Then she turned and ran to Bryn, untied the last rope, pulled her sister into her arms. They collapsed together on the warehouse floor, both crying, both alive. "You came for me," Bryn sobbed. "You came even though it was a trap." "Always," Thea whispered. "I'll always come for you." Police flooded the warehouse. Paramedics, more Hell's Angels, a chaos of flashing lights in urgent voices, and Detective Morrison appeared, took in the scene, then looked at Thea with something like awe. "You walked into a death trap for your sister." "She'd do the same for me," Thea said simply. Morrison smiled. "Yeah, I believe she would." The aftermath took hours: statements, medical checks, evidence collection. 12 serpents were arrested. Their leader, a man called Dante, had been killed in the firefight. The gang was broken, scattered, and Declan Crane was in custody, facing murder charges, kidnapping, attempted murder of minors, enough to ensure he'd never see freedom again. Thea sat in the back of an ambulance, blanket around her shoulders. Bryn pressed against her side, refusing to let go. Cade approached, sat beside them, pulled both girls into his arms. "You know what I realized today," he said quietly. "What?" Thea asked. "Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters. And you showed up for my daughter. Twice. Put yourself between her and bullets, between her and monsters." He paused, voice rough. "Papers came through this morning. Official adoption. You're a Blackwood now. Legally. Permanently, if you still want to be." Thea looked at him. This man who'd taken a homeless stranger and called her daughter, who'd mobilized an army to save 2 girls, who'd shown her what family could mean. "I want to be," she whispered. "Then it's done." Cade kissed her forehead, then Bryn's. "My daughters, both of you, now and always." Margot appeared with blankets and hot chocolate, fussing over both girls with tears streaming down her face. And for the first time since Claire Winters died, Thea felt completely, utterly safe. 4 months passed. The trial was everything James Wright had warned it would be. Brutal, invasive. Declan's lawyers tried every trick, called Thea unreliable. A street kid with addiction issues, a girl who'd do anything for attention. But Thea sat in that witness stand and told the truth. Every painful word. She looked at the jury, not at Declan, kept her voice steady even when her hands shook. And when the defense attorney suggested she'd made it all up, she met his eyes and said, "My mother died in front of me. I watched a man murder her and smile while he did it. I don't need to make that up. I wish I could forget it." The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts, life without parole. When the verdict was read, Thea felt Cade's hand squeeze her shoulder, felt Bryn slip her small hand into hers, felt Margot's arm around her waist. Justice. Finally. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, but Hell's Angels formed a wall around the family, escorted them to waiting bikes, spirited them away before the media circus could fully descend. That night, they had dinner at Cade's house. Just the family. Margot cooked, Cade set the table. Bryn chattered about nothing and everything. Normal, beautiful, home. After dinner, Bryn tugged Thea upstairs. "I have something for you." In their room, she pulled out a drawing, newer than the others, more carefully done. It showed 2 girls, older than stick figures, holding hands. Under them, in Bryn's improving handwriting, "Sisters Forever." "I wanted you to have this," Bryn said, "so you remember, even when things are hard, even when you're scared, you're not alone anymore." Thea hugged her sister, this little girl who'd saved her just as surely as she'd saved Bryn. "I love you," Thea whispered, the first time she'd said those words since her mother died. "I love you too," Bryn replied, simple, certain, true. 5 months after the shooting brought closure in unexpected ways. The adoption was finalized. Thea Winters Blackwood, official, legal, permanent. The serpents scattered without leadership, some arrested, some fled Oakland. The ones who remained knew better than to challenge Hell's Angels territory. And Thea started school, real school, with Bryn at her side. Security still present but distant, watchful but not oppressive. She made friends, slowly, carefully, learning to trust again. Therapy continued. The nightmares decreased, not gone but manageable. Sarah taught her that healing wasn't linear, that some days would be harder than others. That was okay. Progress, not perfection. On a warm Saturday in early September, Cade declared it was time for celebration. New Life Day, he announced. 5 months since the shooting, 5 months of family. That deserves recognition. He organized a barbecue in the backyard. Hell's Angels families invited. Margot in charge of food. Bryn in charge of decorations, which meant streamers everywhere and glitter on every surface. As the party got into full swing, a truck pulled up. Axel emerged carrying a cardboard box that moved. Bryn squealed. "Is that what I think it is?" Axel grinned. Set the box down, opened it. A golden retriever puppy tumbled out. All paws and floppy ears and enthusiastic tail wagging. "Every family needs a bah," Cade said. Figured it was time. Bryn dropped to her knees. The puppy climbed into her lap, licking her face. She dissolved into giggles. "What should we name him?" Cade asked. Thea knelt beside her sister. The puppy immediately transferred his attention to her, wiggling, whining with excitement. "Guardian," Thea said softly. "We should name him Guardian." Cade smiled, understanding the meaning, the weight behind the word. Guardian it is. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Thea found herself standing at the edge of the yard, watching her new family. Cade flipping burgers with Axel, Margot arranging desserts, Bryn teaching Guardian to shake hands with varying success. Hell's Angels and their families scattered across the lawn, laughing, living together. "You okay, sweetheart?" Margot appeared at her elbow, always knowing when Thea needed grounding. "I'm good," Thea said, and meant it. "I was just thinking." "About what?" "About how 10 months ago I thought my life was over. I thought I'd be invisible forever. That I'd disappear and nobody would notice or care." She paused, watching Bryn giggle as Guardian tried to climb her. "But I'm here. I'm seen. I matter." Margot pulled her close. "You always mattered, honey. You just needed the right people to see it." Later, as the party wound down and stars began appearing in the darkening sky, Cade called for attention. "Got something for the girls," he announced. He disappeared into the house, returned carrying 2 leather vests, small, clearly custom-made. "Hell's Angels don't usually make honorary members," he said. "But you two are special. You're family. And family wears the patch." He held up the vests. On the back, instead of the full club logo, was a single patch. Family in block letters. Bryn's eyes went huge. "We get to be Hell's Angels. Honorary. Until you're old enough to decide for yourself. But yes, you're one of us now." He helped both girls into their vests. Thea's fit perfectly, settled on her shoulders like armor, like belonging. The gathered Hell's Angels erupted in cheers, whistles, applause. Axel stepped forward. "Welcome home, little sisters." Thea stood there, surrounded by family, wearing a vest that said she belonged, with a sister who loved her and a father who'd chosen her and a future that was finally hers. She thought about Claire, wondered if her mother could see this, if she knew Thea was okay, was safe, was loved. "I hope you're proud, Mama. I hope you know I'm okay." A hand slipped into hers. Bryn, always knowing when Thea needed grounding. "You're crying," Bryn observed. "Happy tears," Thea explained. "Those are the best kind." As the party continued around them, as Guardian romped through the yard, and Cade laughed at something Axel said, and Margot hummed while cleaning up, Thea made a decision. She would never forget where she came from. The streets, the hunger, the fear, the 10 months of invisibility, but she wouldn't be defined by it either. She was Thea Winters Blackwood, daughter, sister, survivor, fighter, guardian. She was home. That night, tucked into her bottom bunk with Guardian curled at her feet and Bryn's soft breathing from above, Thea whispered into the darkness. "Thank you. For the family who'd found her, for the sister who'd saved her, for the father who'd claimed her, for the chance to be more than a statistic, more than a ghost, for being seen." From the top bunk, Bryn's sleepy voice drifted down. "Did you say something just thinking out loud? Think quieter, Guardian and I are trying to sleep. Thea smiled. Yes, ma'am. She closed her eyes. For the first time in 11 months, she slept without nightmares. Outside Oakland hummed with life. The city that had swallowed her whole and then given her back transformed. The city where she'd been invisible and then became impossible to ignore. The city that was home. In the morning there would be school, homework, chores, normal things for normal kids. But Thea Winters Blackwood wasn't normal, would never be normal. She was extraordinary, forged in fire, tempered by love. She was a girl who'd chosen bravery over survival, family over safety, love over fear, and she was exactly where she belonged. The end of her old story, the beginning of everything else.